Ravens, a short story by TheKaweahCat. I'd like to say that everything changed the day that the Ravens came. But the truth is far more boring, as reality often is. When the Ravens first started to appear, no one really gave them any notice, and those who did were called crazy. I mean, come on, giant bird-like creatures as big as cars, who could play with your mind and eat people. I mean, that's something that's reserved for like the bottom of the barrel of cryptozoological documentaries. That's crazier than all those reptoid conspiracy theories, and a lot less sexy. I always liked the El Chupacabra, Bigfoot, Lizard Man, Loch Ness Monster. Those had more appeal to me. The big Thunderbird conspiracies rarely interested me, even with my close ties to local tribes, because, they're just big birds. It seemed like the most mundane of all those fun little explorations. You know, the ones where half the believers don't actually believe and just see it as something fun to play late at night and give yourself the goosebumps. I thought Mothman was cool, but now I suspect he may have been one of the first Ravens. What are the Ravens really? No one knows. Dark spirits, some say. Aliens, some say. Military experiment gone wrong? That one's always in there somewhere. All I know is that one day they were all over the news. That's how it always happens. Politicians in power will deny something for as long as it's politically advantageous. Then when it's not, the whole platform will turn on a dime and suddenly it's real. Suddenly the numbers start coming out for all the people who went missing or still going missing. Decades of reports were suddenly being validated. The military wasn't effective. It felt like the Ravens could just appear and disappear wherever they wanted, and so much like everything else, we just started to fold it into our daily lives. Sure, there were monsters out there, but hey, folks gotta work, people gotta shop, kids gotta go to school. Next thing I knew, the government was coming out with all these little self-protection protocols, you know? Try not to leave kids and elderly unsupervised. Always keep top cover if you can. Look all 3 ways before crossing the street. They come when you are weak. They can take you fast, but they really want you slow. Stay calm. Don't get too high. Don't get too low. Watch for the masks. Beware the Ravens. My sister and I actually survived a Raven attack when I was younger. I think I was 13. She was 18, and she was driving me home from school in this old beat-up clunker. It was a manual. I should have known something was wrong by the way she was grinding the shit out of that clutch. I would later find out that she was experiencing guy trouble. We lived on this big hill. And if you've never lived on a hill, I highly recommend it. It's great views, cleaner air, a general separation from the claustrophobia of the urban sprawl. It's tops. But it's not especially easy for a car. Brakes wear out quicker. Engines run hotter. If you're being slow on the clutch, like my sister was, you can stall pretty spectacularly. And that's just what happened. That little chop and quiet rattle, and then just a stream of curses and tears. I wanted to remind her to stay calm, but I was young and didn't know how to interrupt tirades. When she finally calmed down, she told me that we would have to turn the car around and head downhill to get the engine running properly again. So, like you do, we stepped out for a moment to eyeball the maneuver and see if we could get it done without power steering. She was older, but I was a really strong kid, so she asked me to help with the wheel. And that's when it happened. I think she must have heard it before I did. Those massive wing beats, all bass and breeze. She suddenly yanked the back door open. It was the closest, grabbed me by the scruff of the collar and threw me in before diving in herself and closing the door. This is when I started to hear it. That beat, beat, beat of the wings, and the hiss of air rushing over feathers. Suddenly I was upside down. Everything was upside down. The car had been flipped. I smashed into the roof. I felt my left shoulder come out of its socket. We rolled twice, cracking all the glass and turning the windows foggy with fractures. Couldn't see anything. I wanted to scream, but I was too focused on my sister. Her head had bashed against the rear windshield, and she was now limp on top of me, eyes blank with a trickle of blood running down her face. I wanted to get away from the blood, but more than anything, I didn't want to move. I heard a tap-tap on the front passenger window. Then the fractured glass shattered, and its long, fleshy, whip-like appendage punched through and started to feel around the front seat. I'll never forget the spiky barbed bulb at the tip of this thing. It quickly figured out that we weren't in the front seat and started to sneak over the backrest to where we were laying. Lucky for us, that's when our local security force showed up. I heard the screeching of tires and the distant rattling of firearms. The whip-like thing was quickly pulled out of the car, and I heard the Raven scream. There were 2 massive wing beats, and then nothing. The shooting stopped about a second later. We'd been saved. For years, my sister would lord over me the fact that she had heroically saved me, but considering how much longer she'd spent in the hospital, she'd earned that much. The Ravens have faded into the backgrounds of most of our lives now, just another hazard in the constant fucking deluge. Like, trans fats, neighbors with different opinions, giant fucking monsters that will melt your brain. I grew up, went to college, studied environmental science, and got out of there without doing any drugs. That's pretty good for my family. I teach now, like my grandparents used to. Environmental science is a generalist subject, so I'm qualified to teach students in all kinds of subjects in the realm of biology. Right now, I'm the in-house substitute at my local college. I don't have my own course just yet, but other professors are always going off on studies, sabbaticals, or just getting sick. Today was one of those days. The freshman ecology teacher got sick, and I had to jump in for a 9 a.m. class on symbiosis with about 10 minutes notice. And here's the thing, I actually pulled it off. I know symbiosis well, but with zero prep time, I was just covering the basics. How symbiosis fits into the broader ecological picture, mutualism, resource and service mutualism, endoparasites, ectoparasites, brood parasites, kleptoparasites, commensalism, amensalism, competition, the competitive exclusion principle, ecosystem engineers, examples of all of them and how we fit into the picture, and all that only got me to about 35 minutes into a 50-minute lecture. And so I did what I do best. I started to wax poetic about the scientific ethic and the role that we humans must play in our ecosystems to keep them balanced. I leaned on the fact that these were freshmen. Half of my job was getting them used to doing a shit ton of work, and the other half was keeping them psyched and motivated to do that work. And so I waffled, and I psyched, and I motivated. And you know what? It actually worked. They clapped for me. An ovation. I stepped into the lounge feeling like a goddamn hero. I felt even better after talking to Laura, one of the marine biology assistants. She's a bit older than me, but man, is she beautiful. I never knew how attractive I found intelligence till I met her. Maybe I'll see her at the interdepartment softball game this weekend. Should be a good game. The life sciences versus the geography department. It's a whole thing. We lost the last 3 games, but I was unavailable. This weekend, I'm fixing on playing the ringer. I told Laura that I was predicting a 3-2 or 4-3 win. Something dramatic with climactic moments like Angels in the Outfield or Major League. I really am a pretty good pitcher. From what I heard, our problem was that the games were becoming walkathons, and that's never fun for anyone. But I know I can toss strikes. Might even mix in a curveball. Shouldn't be too hard to figure out. A few hours later, I was at my grandparents' house demonstrating this fact by knocking down a cereal box with a satsuma from 40 feet away. "Be sure not to hit the flowers," called my grandma. I mean, I doubt he can do that much damage with a fruit. That was my grandma's sister's husband. I think the term is grand uncle. He and my grand aunt had come over to visit as well. My grandma's cancer was back. She'd be starting treatment next week, but none of us were really worried. She'd beaten cancer twice before, and there was no reason she couldn't do it again. She was a tiger of a woman, a true blue tenacious queen. And it'd take more than this to take her out. We all knew that. My grandpa was sitting next to her, content but constantly attentive in that romantic way of his.
Well, you see, she's worried about the marigolds. The tops are easy to knock off. I'm done anyway. I just wanted to show you that I could do it. No, I think you'll do great, right, kitten? Of course,
said my grandma.
If he puts his mind to something, he always figures it out. Yes, he does.
I smiled bashfully to myself as I retrieved the satsuma in the cereal box and took them inside. I returned the cereal box back to its place in the cupboard and washed the tiny citrus in the sink. My grandpa came inside to grab a soda from the fridge. A song floated into my head and I started to hum.
So kiss me and smile for me. Tell me that you'll wait for me. Hold me like you'll never let me go. I'm leaving on a jet plane. I don't know if I'll be back again.
Suddenly I was crying. I could feel my eyes go red and the wetness on my cheeks. I looked up from the sink at my opaque reflection in the window and saw only my placid, smiling face. I moved to my grandpa and grabbed his shoulder. He looked at me surprised.
This isn't right,
I said.
What are you talking about? Grandma's dead. She died a month ago. Don't you dare say that. She's fine. She's going to be fine. No. Don't you remember? The night that you called me because she was so sick she couldn't walk to the bathroom. She threw up all over me, and we took her to the hospital. She was bedridden for weeks and kept apologizing to me about ruining my shorts, but I didn't give a shit about the shorts. Remember how she was in so much pain that she was practically comatose from the pain meds, and she only woke up to moan and get dosed again. Remember, we all came to sing for her on her last night. I brought my guitar, and we sang Leaving on a Jet Plane because I can barely fucking play guitar, and it's one of the only songs I know. And they took her away. And they cremated her. They burned her. She can't be here. She's not coming back. The cat was in mourning for weeks. Please tell me that you remember all this. Please tell me that you remember this.
My grandpa looked at me with a cold face.
You need to calm down. Remember the ravens.
My heart turned to stone.
Right, I said. I'm sorry. I'm gonna go hang out with the cat upstairs. You do that. Feel better now.
He cracked open his soda and walked back outside. I moved numbly through the house to the central stairway. This time of day, the cat was always roasting her old bones on the heater vent upstairs. However, I didn't go upstairs. I turned, mouth dry, heart pounding like a child alone in the dark, and went down to the basement. I know, it's just, why you go down to the basement when you're scared? This wasn't that kind of basement. This wasn't dank with cobwebs and the shadows. This was a man cave, comfy couch, giant TV. I used to play my video games down here when I was a kid. I was still at the top of the stairs when I saw it. It was sitting on the couch, and it looked like a person, but there was just something wrong there, the shoulders, they were just too narrow. The head was too thin. It was shrouded in this black, amorphous, hooded cloak, and its face was a marble mask. This pale effigy of a bird's head with black, hollow eyes. As I descended the stairs, it turned its head to look at me. The cloak made no noise as it shifted, like something between a cloth and liquid. I heard my grandma's voice as if she was whispering in my ear. "It's going to be okay, dear," she said. "Everything is going to be okay." A beautiful thing happened then. My fear was melted by blinding, white-hot rage. Staring dead into those empty sockets of the mask, I hurtled the railing of the stairs. There was a table in front of the couch, and I dove across it, reaching for the bird-like mask. As I touched it, it folded. Not marble, but as ethereal as the cloth of the cloak. I squeezed the mask and the cloak in my fist, and reality came with it. Folding, pulling, tearing. I could hear the scream in my ears, ripping through my mind like static and white noise. The moment shrunk before me, as if it were disappearing down a drain. My eyes opened, and I gasped in air. Everything hurt, except my legs. I couldn't even feel those. With great effort, I bent to look down. I was seeing red. My feet were stuck in some kind of wax, and my genitals were pointing up at me. Nothing was right. I reached down with great effort and pushed into the waxy, muddy stuff. It stung my hands to touch it. I tried to lift my legs, but there was no strength or feeling there. I pushed even harder, ignoring the pain in my arms, and I somehow pushed so hard that I flew up and landed on my back. I lay there, cold and naked in the fetal position for what felt like an hour. As feeling slowly came back to my limbs, I comprehended that I'd been hanging upside down. I had known that I was naked, but it dawned on me that I was bare. My hands slowly crept over my genitals, feeling shame, though I didn't understand why. I'd never been modest my whole life. Why now? I was laying on hard concrete, but the air told me I was outside. The red faded from my vision, and I raised my aching neck to look around me. I was in some kind of gutted warehouse. The air was moist and the light was gray like on an overcast morning. The doors and windows were all open and hollow, not even there. I thought I saw trees in the gloom. Other figures, other humans, were all around me, dangling from the rafters. I wanted to sob, but my throat was dry. I wanted to help them, but I was small and weak. I uncurled myself and crawled. My legs were still useless. I moved across this hard, cold floor looking for anything, and I saw this sort of framework, like there used to be an office there. And so I went for it. I barely moved before I was breathless, but I kept pushing. And at last, I was at a wall. There was an old copper pipe about a foot up the wall that ran all the way along to the office I was trying to get to. So I grabbed on to stable myself, and I moved like a fucking worm. I was almost there when the pipe I was holding on to broke from the wall with a loud metallic pop. I sat still as the sound echoed through the hollow space. I looked for life and motion in the hanging figures, but there was none. Holding onto the broken length of pipe, I continued to the office. I got in. There was this rotten desk. I crawled underneath, and I just sat and just gasped in that close, moldy air. I drew myself up and clutched the pipe tight.
Now a low drum touches my ears. A wing beat from something massive. I can hear them all around me, circling outside, getting closer. I wish I could. I wish I could remember anything to help me in this situation, but this is all I could think of. So if you ever find yourself here, just remember, They come when you are weak. They can take you fast, but they want you slow. Stay calm. Don't get too high. Don't get too low. Watch for the masks. Always, always watch for the masks. Beware the ravens.